Since, to be honest, we've done at this point two very and gone over what are blatant propaganda pieces to promote joining the comprehensive progressive trade Pacific partnership, or just for simplicity, the Pacific Partnership, are out there. They are out there loud and clear. They got their guns straight off, and it has been the same arguments we have seen. You don't understand. We've joined this so that we can stop China from joining. But I say this: why on earth would these other countries stop China from joining? Especially when there seems to be a desire from these other now 11 countries that want China to be part of it. And what then happens to potentially the UK ending up being flooded with cheap Chinese goods because we're now part of the progressive partnership? What happens, for example, if the US decides to rejoin? This could end up reopening huge questions about medical companies in America and the pharmaceutical lobbying monopolies in America having a huge monopoly on deciding medicine prices. Just because we are in it now does not mean this Pacific Partnership becomes a massive albatross around the UK's neck. And it ultimately certainly seems to be that way, because if this was such a good deal, where is it? You've heard all the up talks about how good this apparent deal supposedly is from Frost, from Sharka Shingham, from Kimmy Badnock. Okay, if the deal's so good, where is it? We have not yet seen what is in this deal, and we already know that Japan has heavily lobbied the UK to accept all terms and conditions of the progressive partnership. Meaning that this whole fantasy about how we negotiated our way in, that we did all this tough negotiating, doesn't seem like it. So, as always, the devil's in the detail. As we've seen with the past other trade deals from Australia and New Zealand, they have not turned out to be good. So, what do you think the likelihood is of what apparently, because again, there has been no negotiations, of what the UK has been forced essentially to get into this new trade club to accept? So I think today we need to go over this article. This article came from The Guardian, basically asking the exact same question. This is not taking back control. We have ceded massive quantities of control to essentially corporations that can now sue the government. Good job, Brexiteers. And bear in mind, joining the Progressive Partnership came from the same minds who brought you Trussonomics. Just, let that sink in. So before we go into this article, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee. We can, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. So over we go today to The Guardian with their article on this of Take Back Control. With this Pacific trade deal, Brexit Britain has just signed it away. Last night, the government announced that Britain had joined a trade deal so contentious that it united Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders in opposition to US membership. And while hardcore Brexiteers would like to pretend this is the ultimate payoff for our decision to leave the EU and write our own rules, the reality is somewhat different. In signing the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the CPTPP, and again, we'll just call it the Pacific Partnership just for its simplicity, Britain has ditched environmental standards, signed up to terms that will undermine British farmers, and left us open to being sued by multinational multinational corporations in secretive courts, and all for no real economic benefit. Bet you don't see any of these Brexiteers who are literally, uh, you know, furiously making some very suspicious hand movements under the table about this Pacific Partnership deal. It makes you wonder why they're not talking about this. But of course, as we said, this is the exact same people who wanted to join this who brought you Trussonomics. And we all know how well that went, completely crashing the economy and almost destroying the entirety of the UK pensions industry. So the deal began life as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TIP, a last gasp of the hyper-globalization, alongside its ill-fated sister deal, or the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. It aims to lock participating countries into rules that prioritize pro-market corporate interests and the corporate power grab that was then sold to a very skeptical public as a way of containing China's economic power by surrounding the country in a sea of neoliberal trade. But like the TIP, the deal sailed into very strong anti-globalization headwinds. And in the US, the last thing the public wanted was more outsourcing jobs, longer and more fragile supply chains, and further power vested in the hands of big businesses. And the 2016 presidential election was the death knell for US membership. When the US withdrew, few of the contentious parts of the deal were placed on ice, including rules that would have handed over even more power to pharmaceutical monopolies to set medicine prices. And bear in mind, there are a lot of Brexiteers saying, oh, don't worry, the US will eventually rejoin this. It'll come back. What do you think the US is going to demand as part of its price to entering into these negotiations? Because I guarantee that could soon very easily come back on the table. That is absolutely for sure. But there is still much to dislike about what remains of what is now known as the CPTPP, or just again for simplicity, the Pacific Partnership. The most pressing issue reported from the talks is that Britain has been forced to lower environmental standards as a condition for entry to the deal. So already we've been forced to lower our standards. Cracking job, Brexiteers. Palm oil plantations in Malaysia are a driver of deforestation and threatening biodiversity, including several of orangutan populations. European tariffs on palm oil aim to stop deforestation, but the UK is understood to have agreed to scrap the tariffs as a condition for entry into the Pacific deal. In effect, completely reneging on its deforestation pledges made at the UN Climate Conference in Glasgow. So again, fantastic news there, guys, Brexiteers. Thanks very much for doing that and aiding in global warming. You often wonder why, when you've seen a lot of these propaganda pieces pumped out about us joining this, especially in the Telegraph, they all talk about how we're going to have to come to a head with net zero and really deal with net zero sooner or later and completely ditch that. Very interesting to see a lot of those pro Pacific Partnership articles writing about that and including that in there. But it gets worse. Because the Pacific trade deal isn't a one-time set of rules, but rather gives corporate lobbyists permanent power to force governments to lower standards over time. The whole point of the CPTPP is not to get countries to recognize standards as equivalent to each other and to accept imports even when there are real differences in standards. Britain still endorses the precautionary principle, which places the burden of proof on the producer of the product to demonstrate that it is safe. Most signatories to the Pacific trade deal do not. And this will be inevitable to pressure to accept of food containing pesticides that have been outlawed here, and antibiotics in livestock farming or hormone-treated beef. So at the moment, again, a lot of these pro-Pacific Partnership articles are writing, don't worry, the fact that our high food standards are going to be kept. For now, yes. But later down the line, as these countries start to put more pressure, the fact that we don't, we aim to put the burden of proof on the producer of the product to demonstrate it's safe, those other countries don't. So this idea that we will not be accepting lower food standards is completely and absolutely false, because now these countries do not have to prove that their products are safe or contain the things that we have banned for sale in this country. They can send it here. They do not have to provide that burden of proof. You can already see how bad this is going to go. And yet, this is being treated as a massive win by Brexiteers. And again, I thought we were all about respecting sovereignty. Doesn't look like it. So, but nothing better displays the heavy bias towards big business interests than the corporate court system at the heart of the Pacific Partnership, an international arbitration system that will allow corporations to sue British government for treating them unfairly. And fairness here is highly subjective. Corporate courts are increasingly used to challenge in all manner of climate action, and Canadian companies are particularly aggressive users of this system, having brought at least 64 cases against governments. One such ongoing case sees Colombia being sued for over $700 million for daring to restrict gold mining operations on environmental grounds by a Canadian company that didn't even have all the permits needed to mine and has its environmental impact assessment rejected. I, for one, am going to be looking forward when the Canadians start suing us over rejecting hormone injected beef. Oh, I can see that. I can see that coming a mile away. That is going to happen. That is an absolute certainty that they are going to do that. So, as Chthonic would say, because I know he's Canadian, I look forward to you suing us very soon. but that's going to happen now. That's going to happen because we've joined this, or well, we're at least soon to join this. So, in another more famous case, a Canadian corporation is suing Biden's administration for at least $15 billion for cancelling the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have carried environmentally devastating tar sands oil from Alberta to the US, and Canada is a signatory to the CPTPP. All of this in the absence of evidence that the deal would boost jobs or growth. By the government's own estimates, the deal will add a mere 0.08% of GDP after running for about 10 years. The number is so small as to be meaningless in the uncertain world of economic predictions. So, what is the point? For the government, oh dear me, for the government, in true Liz Truss style, it is, quote, proof that they can do things, however detrimental those things actually might be to the people they are governing. For some, it's an additional benefit to joining the Pacific deal, and the rules being foisted on us diverge from EU rules, providing the added impediment to a future government for negotiating closer relations with our neighbours. All of this is a far cry from the idea that through these trade deals, we would have a chance to set our own rules. Trade journalists have reported that another Pacific trade deal member, Japan, had worked tirelessly. And this is one thing I want to sort of stress about, because a lot of the Brexiteers, including Kemi Badenoch, have said that they have negotiated all this stuff, that negotiations have taken place. Not according to these other countries, and especially this, because this is a point I really want to emphasize. So according to trade journalists, they've reported another Pacific trade deal member, Japan, had worked tirelessly to ensure Britain accepted all existing Pacific Partnership rules without any exemption. So when we see this final deal, there is going to be a lot in this deal which is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I don't think a lot of people are prepared for it. I think this is going to shock a lot of people. I think it's going to include a lot of people who were really pro-Brexit. But we'll see how far. And this, again, is going to split, I think, more of the Brexit crowd, because a big part of the Brexit crowd were massive pro-free market fundamentalists. And as they always were, as we always said, this is what they are. This is what Brexit was all about, to turn us into a Singapore on the Thames, to have a low regulation, low tax country. But that's not what people want. But this is all part of it. And yet, as is being made continuously to point, there is no proof that joining this would provide any better economic assessment for the UK. And unfortunately, we seem to have signed up to something which is going to do us a lot of harm. A lot of harm. So anyway, let's finish this off. So in order to prove that we've taken back control, we are in reality relinquishing it as quickly as possible. And at the last thought, for those who at least hoped for parliamentary sovereignty was a cornerstone for British democracy, the Parliamentary Committee, able to properly scrutinise treaties like the Pacific Partnership, was abolished last week. So much, again, for parliamentary sovereignty, so much for being able to scrutinise these trade deals, especially, once again, when it's been completely abolished. This is why I think we really, really need to start kicking up a stink about this. Because just those things alone, not yet, even when we've seen the full deal, this is going to prove to be so bad. Like, and the thing is, we know it's already going to be bad, because not only is this being provided and at least sold by the same people who brought you Liz Truss and Trussonomics, and again, as we said, we all know what happened there. This is being done for little to no benefit, but is being done just because we can prove we can do it. And I am waiting with bated breath to see what happens when we actually get that full deal. Because, as always, with all these trade deals that we have seen, especially with the Australian New Zealand one as prime examples, we did not see what was in those deals until pretty much, Boris Johnson had signed on the dotted line. It's far too late to alter those deals or renegotiate now. And if we did try and renegotiate those deals, pretty much Australia and New Zealand would play absolute hardball with those and squeeze us out for even more stuff. And remember, the Australian trade delegation was absolutely flabbergasted that we were rolling over and pretty much giving them everything for nothing in return. What on earth have we signed up to? What on earth have we signed up to? And yet, you're going to get a lot of Brexiteers celebrating this as an absolutely fantastic deal. Bear in mind, we actually haven't even seen what's in this deal yet, what we've even signed up to yet. And as we said there, if you voted for Brexit believing that, parliamentary sovereignty was meant to be a cornerstone of our democracy, well, the committee that oversees these types of things, well, that's gone. What what have we signed up to? Honestly, what have we even signed up to? That's the terrifying thing. The fact that you've got Timmy Badlock saying, "Oh yeah, we've done all these amazing negotiations. Don't worry, guys, we've negotiated our way in perfectly." Meanwhile, you've got Japan basically saying, "Yeah, we've basically made sure that the UK accepts all the rules as they are currently." Bear in mind, what this is about is not harmonization, making sure that the rules and regulations are standards. It's about lowering. It's about lowering those to the lowest common standards. That's what's going to start happening. That's why in Frost's article, he again at the ending point he lobbied for the EU retained law bill again to be brought forward, to be fast tracked, and to retain its 2023 sunset clause deadline. And well, we've already talked about a disaster, what that would be in and itself. But I just don't know what we've signed up for. And I don't think many people really do appreciate it. Unfortunately, we're not going to find out until maybe even potentially, well, the Prime Minister's signature is on the document. And by then, it's too late. This is why I've said we've got to start pushing back now. We cannot sleep on this. So, as always, like I say, please do share this out with people who are celebrating this, who think that joining this is a massive success. Share this with your friends, family, and etc. Make sure this news is spread about, because this specific partnership is not what as it is being sold as. It is a complete and absolutely Trojan horse, which is brought to you by the same people who brought to you Trussonomics. And if that makes you worried, it should. It should scare you to your very bones. So, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Like I say, please do click on that like, share, and subscribe button. Like I say, we need to start spreading the message. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. Like I say, down below, there are links down below for Patreon, one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, etc., etc. All down below. Go check it out. And as always, we'll see you all next time.